morning and welcome to another episode of Bureau to Go. Today, I want to focus on communication, specifically if you are leading a team or an organization, a company, if you're in charge of something. There's a lot of things we have to keep in mind as we communicate. And I have to try and do this all the time. I'm not the best at it. The first is make sure you realize that as someone in a position of power, your words carry a lot more weight than you may realize. Sometimes you say something without realizing the impact it's going to have down the line. And I know it can suck because you're like, I'm so busy. I've got so many things I'm trying to keep moving that you just say something quickly, but you're going to derail tomorrow if you're not careful with what you say today. A perfect example of this is, I'm going to truncate this story. I'm going to make it short. I don't know why I said truncate. College words, let's do it. But I worked at an agency. We had a bank for a client, and the president of the bank came in one day, picked up Post-it notes, and he said, "How much do these cost?" And the director of marketing looked at him and said, "They're about $2 a pack." And he went, "Wow, that's really expensive." The bank sent out the next day a memo to get rid of Post-it notes at over 600 branches. When I saw him next, the president, he goes, "Carl, have you seen any of those sticky pieces of paper?" And I was like, "Post-it notes?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, "I've looked in every closet. I've asked people, like nobody seems to know where they went." He didn't have a concept what they were or the cost or any of that. He just made a brief comment and a bank wiped out Post-it notes across the entire, every branch just gone. So realize your words have a lot more power than you think. Also, make sure that you're not jumping back and forth. This is the one that I'm worst at. I keep thinking one thing and then another, and I know it's just frustrating as hell. I'm sorry to everybody who ever worked with me, but it always came from a good place. But the reality is it caused bad things. People were confused. They didn't know what to do. Somebody heard one thing. Somebody heard another thing. So be careful with that. Then I also want to really focus here on the channels we use to communicate, because I think that's really important. If you have something that you want to get out to people, and it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, there's not much emotion attached to it, then email is always a good solution. Now, one thing when you're sending an email, though, is pay attention to who you are. You may have noticed I'm a little extroverted. I get hyper. I love exclamation points. People who aren't like me, introverts, for example, exclamation points feel like I'm yelling. So I need to be careful the punctuation that I choose, because when you realize my words have impact and I'm using exclamation points, it can be a double whammy, a little 1-2 punch there, special effect for you. You're over here, what am I doing? So really think about it with your emails. Also, if somebody emails you and you don't know them that well, look at how they approach the email. If they start off saying, "Hey, I hope you're having a great day," cool. Reply back with something like that, right? Like say, "Hey, I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a great day too." But if they start off just cutting to it, "Hey, these are the things we're looking at. This is the stuff we need." You know, some people, they're much more just culturally where they grew up. It could be what their day is like. They don't have time for the chit chat. I always have time for the chit chat. Ask anyone. I'm ready. Call me now. Let's do it. But a lot of people don't. So you need to pay attention to that. Are they using exclamation points, right? Are they using ellipses? So there's all kinds of things that just by looking at what they're doing and mirroring it, just like a lot of people will talk about mirroring when you're having a face-to-face conversation, I think that's really important. Now with email, one thing I would definitely say is if you find yourself reading an email again and again and again because you're trying to make sure it sounds right, or you ask somebody else, "Hey, would you read this for me and ask me and tell me how it sounds?" Well, then that shouldn't be an email, because there's something emotional in there and something you're worried about. So when you have an email that you're worried about how somebody's going to hear it, don't use email as a channel. If you're communicating with a lot of people, I think video is a really great way to communicate. And I've done this at one of my companies before, and I'm doing it more and more now. I'm doing it right now with you. Because if I were to write this out, it just wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't hear my tone. You wouldn't understand what I'm going for. So video is a great way. Send somebody a video and say, "Hey, I just wanted to get this over. Wanted to make sure that we were going in the right direction. Would love your thoughts." Whatever it might be. If you know that you need to see that person or hear that person, phone is great. Video calls are great. but nothing replaces in person. Now, this is really tough if you're on a distributed team, but just think about it when you're getting ready to talk with someone, when you're getting ready to share something with someone. What are you trying to get across? How are you going to know that they understood? Email is a one-way void sometimes. And the last thing I'll leave you with is when you have a message for somebody, try to think about what your goal is. Sometimes as leaders, we'll put out longer messages that may have a lot of context and even subcontext. And then we don't hear anything back. And the reason why is because we asked a lot of stuff and people aren't sure what we really want, what we're asking for. It wasn't directive. It didn't directly ask questions. It didn't say do these things. So people aren't sure. You may have derailed somebody's day. But if you know that you want to hear from people, and I know some people say don't do this, but if you say, hey, here's some options we have, let's talk about it tomorrow, or let's figure something out in a couple of days, let's get on a call. If it is something where it's just like, hey, we're going to move in this direction, let me know if you have any concerns, that's great too. But if your whole point of sending a message is to get a response, make sure that you're leaving room for somebody to respond. If your point of sending a message is to get the message across and nobody responds, be okay with that, because that wasn't your goal. So anyway, that's it. I hope you had a great week, and we'll be back soon. Later, Bureau to go.